Garde by Alternative Armies, a nice little bite-sized game that you can play, a couple of minutes. You're at a convention, you got a few minutes to kill. Throw down a duel. Doesn't take that long. But if you wanted to do a longer form campaign, it has rules for schools of dueling. It's got rules for honor. We're kind of blowing all that off. It's got campaign rules. If you take an injury, it could affect your appearance or your ability in later battles. That will affect the way that you build your character profiles. But today we're just doing a simple little one-off. So let's take a look at our duelists. As you probably guessed from the title on the tin, we've got a short king. We're just going to call him that, obviously a dwarf. And we've got a lovely ginger here. Now, the big difference, as you've already noticed, is that our short king is dressed in chainmail. He has a shield. Remember, that shield does not protect him if you attack him from these three squares. She is completely unarmored, so she's going to be a lot faster, but she does have 3 wounds. So he gets a save for his armor and 1 for his shield. But because he spent a total of 5 points on gear, he's only got 5 points for attributes. That's going to slow him down. He doesn't have nearly the options she does. All this weight means he can only move 4 squares. Remember, turning 90 degrees counts as a square. And then he has to spend a turn using just the D6 action die. She has a total movement of 8. And because she is fighting with a foil, she has a +2 to her reflex. So even when they pick the same die, she is going to be at +4. He's going to be at +1 for the tiebreaker. She is lightning quick, and she's going to have a much easier time staying out of the all-important squares. So let's take a look at what those look like and how they drive our decision-making process. Each character sheet takes about a half a page. I photocopied from the back of the rulebook. You can probably download a PDF from alternativearmies.com. Notice that the first 3 squares up here, well, here's our duelist, right? Our short king, our dwarfy boy, has no reputation, no honor, no sword school. Those are really for the campaign game. Reputation and honor are won and lost on the field of battle. And you can actually run a perfectly serviceable mini campaign in about an hour. If you got 4 friends, you run 3 duels, round robin. My guy fights each of your guys 1 time. Whoever has the most honor at the end of 3 duels wins the game. Kind of interesting things going on there. And toughness is another sort of campaign thing. When you suffer a wound, if you get knocked down to 0 wounds at the end of a battle, toughness will help your guy recover and be able to fight effectively in the next fight. The actions, of course, so here's what I bought. I always start with the equipment. I'm trying to do this, what you see is what you get. Our dwarf clearly has chainmail. That costs 3 points. He has a shield. That costs 2 points. Then we got a cycle over here. He's got a battle axe. The maximum damage it can do is 15 points. Here's its attack squares. So he can attack to the 2 squares to the front and then diagonally to the right. And his shield does not take effect if his opponent is standing in one of these 3 squares. Remember, he stands down here in the bottom center row. The chainmail gives you a maximum movement of 4. The shield reduces that by 1. The battle axe reduces that by 1. See the little -1 move? That means he has a max move of 2, but I spent a couple of points on a move bonus of 2. He can move 4 squares. Then I said, let's give him all 4 attacks. He has flurry, cut, hack, slash. You cannot lunge with a battle axe. That doesn't make any sense. He is not interested in disarming his foes. He just wants to whack them down to his size. That only gives me, after buying all of this armor, that only gives me 5 points to spend. And I spent a couple on the move bonus. I've spent 1 to get that all 4 attacks. For 0, you can pick 3 of these, but we want to have that 1 in 4 chance, right? Reflexes, I didn't spend any points. He's only got 1 wound, didn't spend any points. Strength, I said this wrong last time. It doesn't give you a bonus to damage. It tells you how many D20s you can use. And of course, the actions tells you how many dice you get in your dice pool. So the strength of 2, I want him to have a backup attack die. This is the big one that does the most damage, particularly when you see his opponent. Remember that this is backup, this is sidestep, this is hold position. This is advance 1 or 2 squares. This is hold position and turn about. You can turn 1 or 2 facings. And then this is charge up to 3 squares and make an attack. And if you do, you get certain bonuses. Meanwhile, so with just 8 actions, a couple of these, right? If he fails on his attack with a D8, he is no longer going to be able to sidestep, which may be okay. except for the limits of his attack action. Then we have our princess, the Ginger. Let's drop her down here. Guys love the lady. So same thing with reputation and all of that. But you'll notice right off the bat, she does not have any armor. We compensated that by giving her 3 wounds. She is not eliminated. This is going to be a fight to the unconsciousness, I guess you could say. She does, however, have 10 actions. So she has backups on all 5 of her dice. If she fails on a charge, she still has the ability to make another charge. That's kind of nice. She's got strength of 2, which gives her 2 20-sided dice. Reflex bonus of +2. So she's at a total of +4 to the dwarf's +1. She's got all 5 attack routines except for hack, which you can't do with the foil. I know this probably looks like a long sword, but that's because it's a 15mm miniature. She has a foil, and so the most damage she can do is 14. Let's compare that to the battle axe, which can do up to 15 damage. And then she attacks bing, bang, boom. So she's going to want to try to stand right here and hack away where, or maybe even, I think it's like here. Remember, these got to be facing each other, so it gets a little hard to visualize until you see it on the table. And that's pretty much where we're at. The only question we have left is what's our battlefield going to look like? And it's not going to look like this. I have 2 roads diverged in a distant cliffside area. Unfortunately, when I printed this up, I didn't realize how small these squares were, and the diagonals make it a little awkward. But I wanted to show you this because you can jump online and download any map that would be suitable for, say, when you're playing a game with dungeons and or dragons. Then just print those up and you can have all kinds of nice little effects based on terrain. We are once again going to be using our little pale blue. I used colored pencils, probably should have used crayons. We got a stream, we got a bridge, and our people are going to be coming at each other from either here or here. They're meeting on the road, and this gives us a little asymmetry, gives us a little interest. Remember, if you're higher than the other guy, you get a bonus to damage. If you're in the stream, you have to check your reflexes, and if you fail, there's a chance you wind up in a bad place. The last thing we need to talk about is defense. Remember, when you're playing this 2 players, you will select your attack routine, hack, slash. Here's the little cheat sheet to show you what that looks like. And notice they're numbered 1 through 6, because that way you can use a 6-sided die. You hide it on the table, see? So disarm is a 6, hack is a 5. You just turn the right die facing up to guess what your opponent's going to do. And then your opponent reveals his die. Or you could alternatively just say, look, the attacker puts his die down under his hand. You try to guess what he has. And if you guess right, then you blocked it. 100% chance. If you know what's coming, you're going to be able to block it. In our case, we don't have that ability. And unlike last time, we have uneven routines. He has to guess which one of her 5 routines is coming. She has to guess which one of his 4 routines is coming. So I think what we'll do, to keep it fair, is when he's on defense, he's got to roll a d10. He successfully blocks on a 1 or a 2, right? He's got a 1 in 5 chance. When she's on defense, she has to roll a d8. She blocks on a 1 or a 2. 25 versus 20% chance. You pay your points, you take your lumps. The last thing we have to do, oh good, I'm getting texts. I guess my phone's not smart enough to take that sound out. What can I say? I'm a popular guy, and I secretly have lots of friends. So we got to roll d6. We're going to make this a reflex check to see who gets to come on where. Who gets to choose whether they come on there or there. And we're just going to roll a straight d6, except that we're adding 1 to the red die for the dwarf. And again, the redhead is using the not red dice. That won't be confusing. So even with the extra reflexes, +4 to +1, Mr. Dwarf says, aha, I get to choose. And since I have 4 squares and I don't want to be moving around a whole lot, I'm going to start in this square. And sweetheart, you can start over there. So we start the game and things go very easily because both teams want to sidestep. That is the first square of movement. Then we have a little bit of guesswork to do. If I'm Mr. Dwarf, I'm going to go ahead and just advance. I don't know what she's doing, but if I want to get in here and I want to stop moving around a whole lot because I only have 4. If I charge up to here, and this is where the guessing game comes in. If I charge and she doesn't move, then I'm going to be exhausted. And on the next turn, I'm stuck using a d6. On the other hand, if I move 1 or 2 and she charges, she's going to have a much easier time of things. So I think if I was playing this game, I would probably just advance with him. And with her, I would do the same. And then the reflex thing is interesting because what it actually means is you get to decide whether you or your opponent moves first. So with a total score of, look at that, Mr. Dwarf got an 11 to her 6. So he says, hey, sweetheart, I'm going to leave these up here because this may come into play later. He says, hey, sweetheart, why don't you move? She says, okay, I'll move first. Kapow, I'm done. And then he says, what's his attack routine? I think she has to move 1 or 2. So that's it. She's going to stop right there. He says, that's great for me because I can move 2 squares. And then if you take a look at his primary attack routine, now we're facing him. So he can attack 2 squares forward. Whereas this is her attack routine. I guess, this is what it looks like from her perspective. So she can't attack him because she attacks these 3 squares. On the other hand, if he said, well, fine, I'll just move 1 square, then, if she says, well, I'll move 2, because remember, she has to go first, then he just moves 1 square, and we're right back to where we started from. So it doesn't really matter, except I think maybe she wants to keep on this side of the stream so she has more maneuverability. So she's going to have to eat 1 attack here, and she can't attack back. So he says, all right, fine, I'm going to attack. And he rolls, he gets an 8. Does he? I almost forgot. She rolls a d4, and on a 1 or a 2, she guesses his attack routine, and she did. Now, I didn't specify his attack routine because I'm moving a little too fast. We will for sure do that. Doesn't matter what it is. She rolled a 2. She successfully blocked him. Now, he's moved 3 squares. So he's got to do something. He's got to guess what she's going to do. And this is where the guessing game gets good again, because she says, well, maybe I'll go ahead and sidestep. And he's anticipating that. He says, well, if that's going to be the case, based on my attack routine, I'm going to go ahead and advance 1 square. She has the lower die. She has to commit. And she says, you know what? You have to move 1 square because she's going to go right here. She says, you have to move 1 square. That's just what happens when you choose this die. So he's forced to move up 1 square. Now, he can move 2, which puts him outside of her attack routine. But, he can't because he moved his 4th square. And so now he's tired. Nobody can attack. There's no attack routines because nobody is threatening. Wait, are they? Let me take a look at her squares again. Yeah, that's going to be a problem because now her primary weapon attacks the square to that side. And not only that, but it is on his shield side. So he's got that going for him. And she says, which attack routine am I going to do? She's got a foil. And I tend to think that with the foil, go with your strong suit, right? Why don't we hit him? She's rolling a D8 to attack. So why don't we go with, do we want to go with 2 attacks? Or do we want to go with, she can't slash, or she can't hack. Which one is it? She can't hack or slash. Wait, I'm looking at the wrong character sheet. She can't hack. Which means, maybe we go disarm. If she causes a wound, then the opponent loses his weapon. I think we just go cut and thrust. She just needs to get the 1 hit. So cut and thrust, that's on a 3. He's got to roll a 1 or a 2 to avoid the attack. He does not. So she's going to get the cut and thrust. No bonuses, no nothing. She just rolls her attack. And with a 7, she's going to hit. Then she has to roll to see how many wounds she gets. So we roll, and with a 5, I think that's going to be a single wound. I wish that was on this chart. That's kind of an important one. I might need to just pencil that in. On a 5, the target suffers 1 wound. Does he? Remember that he's got chainmail, so it saves on a 5 up. So this 8 here means that he successfully saved against that wound. It takes no effect. Then, now because all of those rolls were successes, that means you keep all of your dice. So we're still at 10 to 8. If he fails 8 times, he's in big trouble. Now, he has to use a d6. This is not part of his dice pool. It just means if he has to roll any dice, that's what he's rolling. He can't retreat. Normally, if you're doing this as an action, you have to retreat. She says, hey, this works for me. I'm going to go ahead and use my d6 because I'm happy with where I'm standing. If I move to the side, then I'm going to be in a place where I've got an attack routine coming at me. She could turn. Now she's going to stay right here. She gets the free attack. So she does the same thing. She says, this time, why don't I go ahead and try a flurry? It's -1 to hit. He says, I'm going to guess. No, I didn't guess. So the flurry goes through. She used her D10. No, she used a D6 to hold in place. So, no, what's the hold in place? The hold in place is a D12. Sorry about that. So because the hold in place is a D12, let's see, character does not move on a D12. But can turn. I think, now that I think about it, after an attack routine, I think you can turn 1 space. Anyway, she's using D12s. She did the hold, so she gets 2 attacks, and these are at -1 to hit and -1 damage. So with a pair of 12s, pair of deuces, she loses those actions, and that's going to end the turn. He has now rested. She has moved 1, 2, 3 squares, so she still has 5 to go before she needs to take a rest. He can move a full 4 spaces, and he says, I like the fact that you can't hold still anymore. Maybe I'll hold still, that way I can turn. Or he says, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to sidestep. With the 6 to him and the 6 to her, I don't know what happens. I'm just going to re-roll. We're going to re-roll all ties in that case. So with the, wow, she is really not good at this. 6 to 7, but she still says, you have to move first. He says, I'm going to sidestep this way. She says, I'm going to do the same. That means I get an attack and you don't. She is going to lunge, -2 to hit. Target's armor save is downgraded by 1. So she lunges. He says, I'm going to try to block. He rolls a 6 and fails to block. That's not an action die. And she says, well, fine, now I'll attack. And with a 7, she successfully hits. Now, with that 1 wound, he has to make 2 saving throws. And he's got to roll a 5 or better. So what is it? It was minus the slash, the lunge. It was a lunge. -1 to hit. So with a 6, she's still successful. She gets 1 hit. And he manages to block one of those. He managed to block it. That's the end of the turn. Then we get back into the position where we both want to sidestep. And he wins again. Wait. He rolls a 7. She rolls a 6. And he says, you sidestep. She says, all right, well, I'll sidestep here. And he says, I'll sidestep here. Now they both get to attack. And the first attack is going to go to, so we did movement first. Who gets the first attack? A quick check of the rules reveals that it doesn't really matter because she can't attack that square. And he can't attack. Oh, can he attack? Yeah, he can attack where she is. So he's the only one with the ability to attack. It occurs to me I'm supposed to be rolling a D10 for his blockage. He says, all right, well, I am going to have to whack this gal good. I'm only using the D8. I want the +2 to damage. I am hacking away. She says, I'm going to try to predict that. And with a 5, she fails. He rolls his 2 hit, and he misses. So this die goes away. He's only got 7 dice. He's moved 1 square. Both of them have moved 1 square. She's up to 4. He is at 1. Phase, and then you can turn. So he says, now I think I'm going to go ahead and turn after this. And she says, I think I'll go ahead and match you because I like this positioning. He can no longer sidestep. That's going to be a problem. She says, well, I'm going to sidestep because I'll get to go first. He says, I'm going to advance because I want to see what happens when you wind up in the same square. So she sidesteps first, and then he advances. And I have to go to the rule book for this one. If you move into the same square as the person, if you're blocked by a person, then there's rules for that. If a figure's movement is blocked by the opposing figure, movement blocked, the player can choose to either halt their movement in the next square or have their figure move into the same square as the. Wait, they can either halt their figure's move in the square next to the opposing figure. So, yeah, so he can stop here. So we're just going to be trading blows. Once again, she gets to attack first, and she says, I'm going to go ahead and do the lunge, -1 to hit. She gets a miss, and that die goes out of the pool. He says, well, that's fine. I'm going to do I got to do a big one here. I'm going to do a slash, +1 to damage, and I'll move you back a square. He is successful on the 2-hit roll, so he rolls to damage. He gets a 9, which is I think that's just a single wound. And I think that's going to, no, that doesn't end the game because she's got 3 wounds. On a result of a 9, it goes 1 through 4 is no effect, and then 5 through 10 is 1 wound. So remember, he gets a +1 to turn that into a 9. She now has just 2 wounds left. And he shoves her back a square, which is good for him because he doesn't need to move. He says, I'm going to just hold my position. And she says, then, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and charge into combat because I really want to get a big whack-a-do. Now, she can't target him. And he says, I'm happy to just trade blows. So he's going to hold still. She moves into position. He gets the first attack. I forgot to check defense again. This is why a friend is the best friend you can have, is a guy sitting across from the table. I mean, the second best friend. My best friend is you guys watching the video here. He gets to attack first, and she says, I'm going to try to guess. And on an 8, she fails. So he rolls his attack roll. And with another slash, he is going to do 2 wounds to her. And that will end the game. He got the 12 damage, which does 2 wounds. That takes her down to unconscious, and he can either finish her off or let her seconds rush in to tend to her wounds. And we got a whole lot of red on this. Well, we got more red on this lovely white gown. I believe both of these figures come from the Demon World line. I know this guy is Demon World, Ralparth of Europe. I think she is too. I think she's like a... I don't think she's an elf, though. I think she's like one of the Human Kingdom's princesses. I don't know. Maybe those Isthak, those like demons of the north. But there you go. What was that, like 10, 15 minutes? I mean, it took me 5 minutes to draw up both of these characters' stats. It took me longer to pick out all of the dice to put in the dice pool and make sure they were color coordinated than it took me to set this game up. But hey, that doesn't mean that there aren't a whole lot of deep and profound meaningful choices in this. You could play some serious mind games with your buddy when you play a game like this, and it's just a fun, easy little thing. I looked it up, by the way. It's $16, right? Plus shipping, which I know is getting rough these days, but it's worth it. Don't be afraid to pick up a copy of On Guard. In fact, maybe take a look. He runs specials all the time. If you wait, he does like free shipping. He's always throwing free miniatures into your bags. I don't. Maybe he does that for me because I have a reputation as a very popular and influential YouTube internet niche micro celebrity babe. Hey, until next time, guys. I'm praying for you.